Hey, I didn't know that. And that is a big deal. And the people I want to call out are journalists and the media, because that type of process-driven argument against giving Biden the boot is absolutely should have been forefronted in the coverage regarding whether or not Biden should get the boot. So I recently made a video expressing my view that I thought that Biden should pass the torch, that I no longer wanted him to be the DNC candidate. And my views have become a little bit more nuanced on that. In addition, it really doesn't look like he's going anywhere. So I'm sure many of you saw AOC's Instagram Live, where she, if you haven't, I greatly suggest that you watch it in its totality. She pointed out some of her concerns about switching out Biden as the candidate. And I want to review some of her concerns because I've got some questions. I'm not completely convinced he shouldn't be the candidate, but I have some questions about the process, the decision-making process regarding whether or not he should be given the boot. And if he stays, I've got some questions about that too. So let's get it.
The Democratic Convention is in, what, 4 weeks or so? The state of Ohio has legal ballot access issues that require a name to be enrolled and certified on their ballot even before the convention. And that's not because of Democrats, that's because of Republicans. And to people, there are some people that quibble and they say, oh, well, that's not really true because they actually passed this other law that allows the deadline to change. That law that allowed that deadline to quote unquote change also gets enacted and enrolled something like 60 or 90 days after passage, which now puts us in a legal gray zone. So whether you think it's above board or whether you don't think it's above board, I can tell you that it is guaranteed, and it is virtually guaranteed, and it has been confirmed by the Republican Speaker of the House that Republicans are already preparing legal challenges to any name change on the ballot that may happen, occur, arise, or be possible.
Okay, I didn't know that. And that is a big deal. And the people I want to call out are journalists and the media, because that type of process-driven argument against giving Biden the boot is absolutely should have been forefronted in the coverage regarding whether or not Biden should get the boot. If you give him the boot, logistically, what does that mean for the race? And if it could mean a challenge to him being kept on a ballot, even though he's no longer the candidate, and the candidate that the Democrats choose to replace him not being able to be put on the ballot in Georgia or any other state, that is a big deal. I really am pissed off because I have been keeping up on the news about this. Washington Post, New York Times, PBS NewsHour, and nobody said anything about this. This is a big deal. And if you watch her video in totality, she says she asked all the lawyers, all the legal people about this, and they can't give her a for sure answer about it. So that's important. Okay, so here is AOC talking about a campaign finance issue, which is really important that I also didn't realize.
By the way, President Biden and Vice President Harris have been campaigning their behinds off, and there is a war chest of at least $100 million prepared for the general election. If there is a new Democratic nominee, that money cannot be transferred, okay? I'm just like telling you what I know, all right? It can be transferred from a top of the ticket to number 2 on the ticket. It cannot be transferred to someone else, all right? From what I have known. also tell you that I have stood up in rooms with all of these people, and I have said, game out your actual plan for me. Game it out. Have you looked in, like, what are the risks of this going to the Supreme Court? Like, what are these things, right? And I'm not here to, like, assert any major thing. If y'all want to come with the receipts in the comments, that's fine. But what I can tell you is that I have stood up in rooms of folks making these decisions, and I have raised these questions, and no one had an answer for me. Maybe they have an answer.
Okay, so all the money that the Biden-Harris 2024 campaign has garnered, their war chest, couldn't just automatically be transferred to a replacement candidate. That's concerning, because unless the person who replaces Biden is independently wealthy and wants to spend their own money, they don't really have a lot of time to gear up. So my question is, for the donors that supposedly have closed their wallets to Biden, how much money have they committed to whoever the replacement candidate's going to be? And if you watch AOC's speech in totality, she says that the same people who want to remove Biden also actually want to remove Kamala. So as she was mentioning, the money could be transferred from the number one person on the ticket to the VP, but it can't just be transferred to a completely different ticket. So have all the closed wallet oligarchs who are so hot to see Biden removed said, hey, together we are going to come up with $100 million to replace the money that's in the war chest that won't be able to be transferred to the new person that we will have once we get our way and Biden gets the boot? I'm asking. If so, it has not been reported to me. And the fact that the war chest couldn't just be transferred to whoever the new DNC candidate would be, as I told you, I have been reading the New York Times articles about this. I've been reading the Washington Post articles about this. I've been watching PBS NewsHour. I listen to NPR. Nobody mentioned that part. That is a big deal. The media has really been remiss in letting the voting public know all the aspects of what it would mean to give Biden the boot. They've just been doing the horse race part of it, where this set of 22 Democrats over here says they want Biden gone. Nancy Pelosi called and said, let me tell you what the private polls say. These unnamed oligarchs have said, we're closing our wallets. We're not going to give any more. To Katzenberg and calls all he wants. We're not giving any more money as long as Biden's the top of the ticket. That is horse race stuff, and I'm not saying it's not newsworthy, but to not talk about the logistical, process-based implications of what a change would mean is to be remiss in your fourth estate duties. And I'm really annoyed about it. I'm also really annoyed that I read James Carville's article, and I thought his plan was a good one, open primary. But I'm annoyed that the movers and shakers on the inside have not stuck their necks out and said, listen, if we get rid of Biden, here's step A, here's step B, here's step C. We have gamed it out. We do have a plan. And this is how it's going to go. And we are gearing up for the lawsuits, or whatever the plan is. I haven't heard it. But I'm also annoyed at the Biden-Harris campaign, and I'm going to get into the reasons behind that. But it's basically, I haven't heard their plan either. So before anybody can talk about who would replace Joe Biden, first Joe Biden has to be convinced to step down, right? Because only he can make that decision. But what I'm about to play you is her playing a clip of what would happen after that. And it's really important.
Elections are chaotic, and I'm not here to tell you that I know exactly what's going to happen. But let's say there's like some blank question mark as a third. I can tell you that anyone who genuinely wants, like, if you are the kind of politician that genuinely wants to be president of the United States, a lot of those folks don't want that. They don't want to be shooed in 8 weeks before an election starts. Because let me tell you something. People think this election is in November. The convention is in 4 weeks, and early ballots go out. The first early ballots in this country go out 4 weeks after that. This election is not in November. It's in September. It's in the end of September. It's in early October. And so we're almost in August. So I think we need to sit with the stakes, with the reality.
Okay, so again, press, shame on you for not bringing up the fact that the first ballots actually go out at the end of September. You were remiss in your fourth estate duties. I already said that, but it's worth repeating. But if these oligarchs, if these big donors have somebody secret in mind that they're going to throw all their money behind as soon as they give Biden the boot, I'd like to hear who that person is, but okay, fine. But if not, and they just want to give somebody the boot and have an open primary, and you know what James Carville wrote in his article, it's not going to be good if the people that show up for the open primary are people who didn't have ambitions about being president in the first place. Because those type of people probably wouldn't be well positioned as far as name recognition and everything else to run a successful campaign in the time remaining. I'm thinking Gretchen Whitmer would not be in the running. Gavin Newsom, my fantasy husband, would not be in the running. Mark Warner, who I had thought, you know, would not be in the running. Bernie's already said he's sticking with Joe. Okay, fine. So now I do have a fantasy that that Joe Biden passes the torch to Kamala, and then Kamala picks Obama as her vice president. That would be a winning ticket, but that is just a fantasy. Even though the news reports that Obama says that Joe's path to victory is narrowing, I don't think that he is going to come back to be anybody's VP, right? So other than that, who would be somebody who has the national name recognition, but isn't ambitious to want to be president someday and therefore would be willing to be slotted in? Like, who is that person? Yeah, I would like to know who that person is. Here she says something that is not unknown, but is worth repeating regarding polling. But I still have some questions.
Because, like, polling had a red wave in 2022. That did not happen. There is a Republican majority, but, like, the polling had us getting wiped. Like, wiped. And for a long time, that didn't happen. And I don't want to be a data like denialist either, right? Like,
okay, so I'm going to tell you what my concerns are. I'm going to tell you exactly why I made that video saying that Biden should pass the torch. I'm concerned that the coalition that allowed Biden to win in 2020 is not going to stick together. And the peel-offs that I'm concerned about are as follows. Muslims. That whole thing in Michigan with the primary where 100,000 people voted neither, or they weren't interested in anybody, just to show, hey, we are really pissed off about what is going on in Gaza. I don't think that situation has actually improved. And I'm pissed off about what's going on in Gaza. They have a right to be pissed off about what's going on in Gaza. The United States should have really renegotiated its whole relationship with Israel a generation ago. But I'm talking about right now, what's going on right now. I'm not pissed off enough about what's going on in Gaza to not vote for Joe Biden. But they are. And this race is so tight that it's going to be won on the margins. Trump needs not only his entire crazy-ass base, he needs independents and swing voters as well to win. Biden needs his entire base plus independents and swing voters to win. So when you get these little peel-offs on the base, it makes a difference. And I'm concerned that Muslims are so justifiably, righteously angry about Biden's continued support of Israel that they're going to leave the top spot blank. Young people, I'm concerned about them being really angry about Gaza to the point where they don't show up or they leave the top spot blank. Yes, Biden really did push that loan forgiveness. That was a beautiful thing. I was behind that. I don't know if that's enough to make it so that A, young people show up at the polls, and B, they don't leave the top spot blank. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about black men. Not in totality. But Trump increased the number of black and Hispanic men that were voting for him in the election that he lost. Yes, it was a small amount. Anyway, for black men, it went from 9% to 12%. But we need the whole coalition to still stay together. And now, according to the polls, even more black men are wavering or wanting to support Trump. I did a video on the New York Times article where they profiled black men who were supporting Trump, and none of them had supported Trump in 2020. These were black men who were newly going to be intend to be supporters of Trump in 2024. And let me tell you something that really scares me. Okay, with the Gaza thing, at any moment, and Goddess knows I wish he would, Biden could get up and say, you know what? I'm not sending another weapon to Israel. I'm not writing another check to Israel. What they're doing is morally wrong. It's gone too far. I'm done. And that might bring young people and Muslims back into the fold. I wish he would do it just because it's the right thing. But just in a calculating way, he could do that. I read that profile of the black men that are supporting Trump. And these men are so ignorant. Ignorant does not mean stupid. Ignorant means you don't know. Even the educated ones are ignorant. They had, one of the men was a educated man, and I know he had to be educated because he's a school principal. You can't be a school principal in most districts and not at least have a master's degree. And he said something, he said, nobody is talking about the kids who were on lockdown and now they're really behind, and that's not being discussed. The programs that Long Beach Unified, I live in Long Beach, California, and Los Angeles Unified have to help the kids catch up who are behind because of lockdown are funded by the state and the federal government. The federal government is the Biden administration. They are giving money to the states to help the kids who are behind because of lockdown. This man's a school principal and he didn't know that? This man's a school principal and he didn't know that Trump had appointed Betsy DeVos, who, if you look at her history, was dedicated to destroying public education. He appointed her as the public education, as the head of the Department of Education. This man's a school principal. He didn't know that part. The 2025 plan wants to get rid of the Department of Education. This man's a school principal and he didn't know that part. What I'm saying is, these black men that are planning on supporting Trump, I am uncertain if there is a specific policy that Joe Biden could come out and say, okay, I'm now for this, that would win them back, because the reasons that they want to support Trump don't seem logical to me in the first place. So what is the plan for keeping the coalition together? What is the plan for bringing back these peel-offs so that Biden can have all the voters that he had in 2020 plus some independents and swing voters? Like, game that out. I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed for the legit reasons that AOC mentioned, that the people who want to bump Biden off the ticket don't appear to have a game plan that addresses some of the logistical and process issues that she talked about. But I'm also annoyed at the Biden campaign because they are not making their messaging clear to the base voters like me. Okay, we know we have some challenges. We know it's neck and neck. But listen, we've got a plan for some of these peel-offs. And let me tell you what it is. Okay, now I want to break from AOC and play a clip from PBS NewsHour, Brooks and Capehart, where Capehart thought that he was explaining why Biden should be supported and why people should stop talking about giving him the boot. But what he said actually scared me. So I'm just going to play it.
Ever since that disastrous debate performance 2 weeks ago last night, Democrats have been tearing their hair out, self-immolating, and saying what they need to see from the president to make them assured that he is up to the task. He needs to show some life and some vigor. He does a rally in Raleigh the very next day. He needs to sit down with the press and do an in-depth interview. He sits down with George Stephanopoulos a week ago tonight. He's sitting down with Lester Holt at NBC on Monday. He needs to be extemporaneous and do things like that. He goes to the AFL-CIO, speaks with them, microphone, no teleprompter. He did it again today in Michigan. He did it. He needs to talk to the press. You know, he needs to take questions from the press. He's been ignoring us. 59 minutes last night. He answered questions, particularly an impressive question from your colleague, David Sanger, at the New York Times, which I thought, I'm sure he didn't do this on purpose, but was devious in the question that he asked. A multi-part, very complex foreign relations question that the president answered to the point where the press conference got boring because he got so deep.
Yep. Every single thing that the DNC leaders, the oligarchs, whoever, had called on Biden to have to do to show that he was still a viable candidate, he did. And he equipped himself well. That was supposed to be Capehart saying, hey, get off this man's back. But in my mind, I was like, you know what? Capehart's right. Biden did do all those things. And at the end of all of that, the most recent polls don't show him pushing ahead. So this scares me because there is something I feel about Biden that is not connecting with independent and swing voters. And he's going to need more than his base. He's going to need independent and swing voters to win. He did do well at those rallies. He did show vitality and vigor. He did answer those complex questions at the NATO press conference. He did equip himself well when answering questions of George Stephanopoulos and Lester Holt. But still neck and neck. I understand that polls, as AOC explained, can't be right all the time because look how wrong they were. But I feel at this point, somebody who isn't a felon 31 times over, somebody who hasn't been found in a court of law liable for sexual assault, should be miles ahead. Like way beyond the margin of error than somebody who does have those detriments. So for Biden to do those things that he was asked to do to prove he is still a viable candidate, he did them all, and for him not to just soar in the polls, to me, that says there's something about him that is not connecting with those independent and swing voters he will need to win. That doesn't mean that he should be ditched necessarily because of the logistic things that AOC explained, but I want to hear from the Biden and Harris campaign what their plan is to make a connection with those swing and independent voters that he needs to win. Because what he's doing now is not working. And we know, because he should be miles ahead by now. So what's going on? What is their game plan? As a base voter, I need to hear that. That's what's going to motivate the base voters to give more small donations. That's what's going to motivate the base voters to get out there and do the canvassing. Like, if we don't think he's going to win, if we think he's going to lose anyway, how are we going to be motivated to do the things that need to be done to make sure that he does make it over the finish line? Now I'm going to play two short clips from AOC back to back because these really made me think about who it is that is pushing for Biden to be taken off the ticket and what the implications of that might be.
But like separate from voters, like we all know, we live in this country. There's voters, and then there's people with power, and there's people with a lot of money, and there's people with a lot of influence. And in the country that we live in, we have everyday people, and we have voters, and we have government, and then you kind of have this class of people in between, from pundits and media and wealthy people and donors and organization leaders and whatever, and they kind of occupy this space in between. Oh, look at that. They kind of occupy this space in between voters and the policies that we get. And a lot of times that's why government sucks, right? Like, because lobbyists are there and whatever's happening. Anyways, so the debate happens, it doesn't go well. And then all of a sudden afterwards, you get a lot of people in this strata.
Okay. And what she says after that, you get a lot of people in this strata who want to jump ship. So let me play this other clip. Okay, listen to this.
And when I'm talking to folks in rooms, I hear my donor this, my donor that. Those are the inputs that I am hearing reflected by my colleagues. It's not my voters this, my voters that. Every once in a blue moon. But from what I am hearing, my inputs a lot is donor, donor, donor. 2 million, like there was like some, it's like big donors are saying this, big donors are saying that, big donors, like I could to dance about what a bunch of rich people think. What I care about.
Okay, so if you look in my social media feed history, you will see numerous criticisms I have had of Nancy Pelosi. None of them were that she was stupid, and none of them were that she wasn't the ultimate political strategist. One of my criticisms was she is who she is in the Democratic Party because she is excellent at her job. Her job is to pull in the donation dollars, and she's great at it. Her job is not necessarily to be responsive to the majority of the electorate. So I just recently read that she got on the phone with Biden herself, and she said, listen, I am looking at private polling, and you ain't going to win. Not at this rate, buddy. And he said, well, my polls say that I do have a path to victory. And she said, get your damn pollster on the phone, because let's just talk about it. So private polling is not cheap. And I imagine the big donors are the ones that are paying for the private polls that say that Biden can't win. Now, I'm not impugning the integrity of any of the pollsters, but who's paying you to do something and you know they want a certain result, you can't say that doesn't have an influence. I'm just saying. I'm now wondering if the 22 Democrats who signed that letter and who are saying Biden needs to go had donors in their ear telling them, if you expect me to give your campaign a dime, you better get something going to get Biden off the ticket because he's a loser. I'm wondering that. And when they say you're going to drag the rest of the ticket down, not like that's not a historical possibility. When the top of the ticket does poorly, so do the people in the down ballot races. I'm not saying that's not a historical possibility, but I'm wondering if what they really mean is my donor told me if I don't do everything I can to get you off the ticket, he's not giving another dime to me, and that is why I will not win my race. And if that's their real motivation. That was not my motivation, but I now wonder if that's their real motivation, because that number of people sticking their neck out publicly and saying they wanted Biden gone did influence me. In the thing I was thinking was like, well, they're on the inside. They have more access to Biden than I do, or they have more access to people that have access to Biden than I do. If they feel that way, then I'm probably justified in my worries. My worries were my own, as I explained to you, but it did influence me. It did confirmation bias, put it like that. But now I'm thinking, well, you know, what were their real motivations? So in this clip, AOC is not talking about Biden. She's actually talking about herself. But in talking about herself, she turned my mind back to what my criticism is of the Biden-Harris campaign. So first, let's hear what she's saying.
Since I first won election, even with disinformation campaigns targeting me, even with like whatever from the left, from the right, whatever, saying I ain't this, I ain't that. Here's what I know. I won my primary election with 82% of the vote. 82% of the vote. I think I may have won with the highest vote share in terms of a primary, if not the entire city of New York, perhaps the entire state of New York. And so, you know, people may poo-poo where I'm from. I can't change where I'm from. What I can say is that I run a campaign that's not based on big dollar donors. That's not my information input. I run a campaign that is not, surprisingly, like entirely dependent on the internet. It's dependent on the streets, and it's dependent on presence on the ground. And sometimes my digital presence very often replaces in people's perception of me as a candidate what we do in the ground. Like, people don't know that, you know, I've run tutoring programs, mutual aid programs, deep.
Okay, so in this whole video, AOC is actually talking from Puerto Rico, where she is running a program to get generators or solar power into people's homes who have CPAP machines and who need electricity to be consistent because of health issues, right? Or because of poverty. And this is the type of thing that she's talking about. She's out there delivering to her constituents, tutoring programs, mutual aid programs, so forth and so on, right? So doesn't depend on big money donors, depends on what she does on the streets. And I'm listening to her and I'm saying, okay, you're talking about you, and that's how you get the vote share that you get in your elections. I am a donator to the Biden-Harris 2020 and the Biden-Harris 2024 campaign. The only emails or direct mail I have received from them is to ask me for more money. They have not asked me to come down to the local office and sign up for a canvassing shift. They have not asked me to do any telephone banking. They have not asked me to show up at this or that community event where a bunch of black people are going to be and talk to black men about what Biden has done for the community. So here she is saying, I am not just in the streets on an election year. I'm in the streets during my entire tenure as a representative. And the community sees me out there doing for them, and that's why they vote for me. I hear you, baby. So if that's how you win, why have I not received any solicitations from the Biden-Harris campaign to ask me to be a volunteer, to be out in the streets when they know that the election is neck and neck? The only thing they've asked me for is more dimes. But according to her, that's not how you win. You win by being out in the streets. So what's going on? According to her, the election really starts at the end of September, and here we are almost in August. Why hasn't anybody called me or texted me and said, Adriana, we need you down at the office, we need you phone banking, we need you blah, 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 to be out in the streets, if being out in the streets is how you win elections? Like, what's the Biden-Harris campaign doing? What are they doing? I want you to hear this because I think a lot of the leadership in the DNC is misperceiving what is making certain voters resistant to Biden. And AOC may be one of them. Listen to this.
Going into the debate, I'm pretty sure a lot of people knew that the president is old. The president is very old. Donald Trump is also very old and a racist and a neo-Nazi.
All true. But this is what I want to say, which is so important. I go to First Congregational Church of Long Beach. There are plenty of people over 80 at that church. And a good number of them could have wiped the floor with Trump in that debate. You know who else could have wiped the floor with Trump in that debate? Bernie Sanders. I think he's 82. The Pope in Rome, who is 87. Nancy Pelosi, who I believe is 84. Maxine Waters, who is 82, 83, I think. So this is not about age. It really is not. There are plenty of older people. There are plenty of people Biden's age who could have wiped the floor with Trump in that debate. Biden didn't do that because there's something up with Biden. And even in the sit-down interviews with Lester Holt and George Stephanopoulos, Biden did equip himself well on the content of the answers. He did. But he still did not project vitality and vigor. He didn't. He projected frailty. So he's pumped up at the rallies, and then in the sit-down interviews, he projects frailty. Everybody knows somebody like that. Not every over 80 person is like that. There's plenty of over 80 people that are have their full brains and are full of piss and vinegar. But everybody knows or knew, because that person has passed on, someone who had good days and bad days. And when people are like that, that is, a lot of people think that that is the beginning of the slide into decline because they've seen it, right? They've seen it in their own family. So the inconsistency of Biden's ability to maintain a projection of vitality and vigor is the problem. The problem is not his age. I just want to get that straight. I think it's ageist for people to be pointing out, oh, he's old, he's old, he's old. And that's what's... No, it's not that he's old. It's that he doesn't project vitality and vigor. So has this new information, this new point of view that I have received from AOC changed my mind about getting Biden off the ticket or about Biden's ability to win? Not at this point. it has not changed my mind about Biden's ability to win, but it is definitely making me reconsider my call for him to get off the ticket because of the process issues regarding him staying on the ballot, even if he's off the ticket in certain places, regarding his war chest not being able to be transferred, regarding when the actual ballot voting really starts, regarding the fact that people who truly want to be president would not want to step into that slot. All these things make me think, well, we may be stuck with this man. Which makes me push even harder on the campaign, the Biden-Harris 2024 campaign, to talk to me, the base voter, about what their plans are to win. About what their plans are to bring these peel-off voters back into the fold. About what their plans are to be out in the streets for get out the vote and for letting people know what Biden has done in his 4 years for them. Because, as I stated, Trump is so repugnant a candidate that Biden should be miles ahead, way above the margin of error in polling ahead of Trump at this point. And he's not. So something has to change in the way they're campaigning. I would really like to hear what that is, so that I can be a part, so that I can get on board. I want us to win. I desperately want us to win. I don't feel black people can afford for Biden, for the DNC candidate to lose. So the enthusiasm needed by the base to go out and do and to open their wallets and give needs to come from the Biden and Harris campaign, telling us we understand the issues with our campaign and we have a plan. And let me tell you what it is.